Thank you for tuning in to GAF at Gold Rush. We appreciate your continued support. As a disclaimer for this episode, some of our interviewees are based overseas, so there may be some clear differences in audio due to the use of a video call platform. But this issue with audio should be resolved in our future Migrant Story interviews. Thank you. Okay, welcome back and Happy New Year, everyone. This is GAF with G.O.L.D.R.U.S.H. My name is Afia.
And my name is Sharita. Welcome back.
We're really glad to be back with you guys. We wanted to kick off this podcast season connecting with you all. And as some of you know and have been seeing, that we've been growing our social media community. And we are so thankful for all of you for following us and liking our different pages. So again, if you're not already following us, follow us at G.O.L.D.R.U.S.H. GY on all platforms.
Yeah. Well, in November, we started a series called Migrant Stories that so many of you have taken a liking to. So we wanted to expand on the storytelling by tying it to one of our episode arcs, which is called Gold Extraction. And I'll let Afia describe that.
So what gold extraction is, in the literal sense, gold extraction is the process of taking out precious gold from the surrounding rocks and minerals. But metaphorically, gold extraction in this case can be compared to a person's journey, their process of self-discovery and self-reflection of their experiences to seek personal growth. In our series, Gold Extraction, or G.O.L.D. Extraction with our acronym, we find members of the Guyanese and overall Caribbean community to highlight their life experiences, challenges, and triumphs in order to showcase the strength that has shaped them into the individual that they are today.
Yeah. So thank you, Afi, for explaining that. So with that, we do want to start off and give a warm welcome to our first guest. His story is actually what we used to pilot the series, and he's known as Uncle on the print version of the Migrant Story. The reason for that is because our PR manager, she's so quick with putting out the content and creating so much content for us that I didn't get to tell her your name for that. So to put it out on time, she put the name as Uncle. So this person...
Hi, everyone. I'm Uncle.
Uncle. So Uncle was born and raised in Guyana and is a Queen's College graduate who had aspirations of becoming a pilot. And ultimately, he left Guyana to pursue that and landed himself in London. So in the end, he did not become a pilot, but ended up dealing with planes in an unexpected way. So Uncle Stephon, I'm sorry for telling the people your name already, but we're so happy and appreciative to be recording with you today. And we really look forward for you to expand on your story because people have only seen the print version. So here, or anything that we missed?
No, that's great. Thank you for having me, and hello to the virtual hub. I'm sure there are going to be other occasions where you hear me bellowing in the background or something, but my journey has taken such an amazing path that several years later now I can look back, and without a doubt, the foundation that was set in Guyana has ultimately put me on the platform of where I am today. So with that, I give God thanks. I'm grateful for my parents giving me that discipline and whooping to put me on the straight path. That has led to just being an asset within the community. Hopefully I will get the opportunity to return to my old school at QC to lend back some of the experiences and to guide some of the younger folks that amidst all the adversaries or challenges that they may encounter in life, they can overcome if they're disciplined and have a set goal in mind to achieve that. With that, she'll take you through the journey and hopefully you enjoy.
Well, thank you, Uncle Stephon, for that. We look forward to hearing in the future all your efforts at QC and just continuing to develop Guyana. But before we talk about your future ventures and your life abroad, can you take us back to the first moment when you considered leaving Guyana and what factors were at play?
To be brutally honest, I didn't consider leaving Guyana. At the time, I was given an opportunity. I was invited to London by a friend. And the locations, the names on a monopoly board was just, something that I didn't know at that time actually existed in reality. So when I got the opportunity to go to London, I actually queried. I said, "Well, is Paddington a real place? Is Baker Street, London Bridge?" So to me, it was like, "Hey, this is real. Let's go see what this place is actually like." So it was looked upon as an adventure. So that's it in brief. Others might have had a different outlook, but I think for me, not having that opportunity would have certainly led me down the path towards becoming a pilot. And my earliest career, my earliest thoughts of or route towards getting there was to start out in air traffic control. So understanding the basics of how an airport operation was run before seeking the opportunity either via the Joint Services or the Guyana Defence Force, or going into one of the private operators who would then give the opportunity to go and train as a pilot, because it was seen at that time as a very elite career to go into. But I was more over fascinated with fixing the aircraft as opposed to flying.
Do you think that, seeing the planes in Guyana when you were growing up is what contributed to that interest? Or
I think we had a naturally investigative upbringing where we had started out with basic things of an engine. My brother would start winding transformer motors, and subsequently he ended up being an electrical engineer within GC. And for me, it was like, okay, one step up from a car. If you can fix a car, you can fix a tank. If you can fix a tank, you can fix an aircraft. So why not go for the ultimate goal? Be able to not just fix it, but also fly them as well.
Okay, nice. That's very interesting. So would you say that there were any challenges or fears that you faced when making the decision to leave? Because, you just spoke to the fact that, you wanted to go beyond just transformers and cars, and that there were limited opportunities. But now that you were made aware of London and different places that you could visit, what challenges or fears did you have when deciding that that's where you would have to pursue your goals?
Yes, without a doubt, they were fears, because no way in heaven could my parents afford for me to be a pilot. I think by the time I graduated my first degree in aeronautical engineering, it was circa £56,000, which in today's money, you're looking touch or go about $70,000 to be qualified and have your CPL or commercial pilot license. So the logical route for me was, okay, let's take it in stages. Get the certifications out of the way, then see where you can actually apply and what companies will sponsor you towards realizing that goal. If not, it will be the forces. And it just so happened that my route took me to the Royal Air Force. So having left QC, I did my first bit of work attachment to the National Air Traffic Center in Guyana, Temeri International Airport, now Chedijagan. And that really opened up my eyes to a number of things. I subsequently migrated to the UK, and I thought, right, I will pursue this dream. In my ignorance and I guess immaturity, and now that I'm an older man, I can look back and say that, I thought that, okay, I've been to the top school in Guyana, so I should be able to get into any school in the UK. But due to the fact that I left at a very young age, I never sat A-levels, the equivalent of A-levels, which is the benchmark towards getting into first year of university. So it was obviously a slap back to be denied going into a university or being able to attend a university here in the UK. That set me back for 1 year. But what I did was a lot of reflection, and I went back to the actual school and I queried and I said, what courses can I do that will give me credits towards getting onto the degree program, not having the benchmark A-levels that was needed. That led to me doing initially a higher national diploma in computer-aided engineering, which is the equivalent of an associate's degree in the United States. During that time, I excelled. I came down with about 17 out of 22 distinctions. And that sent me straight directly into the second year of the degree program. So I've never done A-levels. I've never done first year university. I went straight to the second year. But bear in mind, this was being driven by the passion to not only be a pilot or be an aviator, but also the fear, and I go back to your first question, the fear of failure, the fear of knowing that if I had to fall back, there was nothing to fall back on because my parents were poor. So I had to fall forward.
So take you back a few steps. You did bring up something that I don't think that everybody might know what it is. And then after you answer that, I'll let Afia talk about the transition. But you mentioned A-levels. Can you explain to those who have not taken A-levels what that is or what the equivalent could be?
Okay. In Guyana, and I'm talking to those who are not really familiar with the Guyanese education system, from first form to fifth form, so effectively from age 11 to about 15, 16, brings you to the mark where you are then eligible to sit the O-level qualifications or ordinary level qualifications. That has now been replaced by, I think, the CSEC exams. From A-levels runs from at the end of that ordinary period or 16 years, so effectively 16 to 18. It's a bridge in which you go into advanced studies. That then gives you that qualification or benchmark qualification to take you on to higher education, which is going into university. But I never experienced that because I went straight into the UK and subsequently onto higher education by the route that I took.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that. But just going back to, your first moments of migrating and transitioning, what were your initial experiences settling in the UK, and what were the most surprising and challenging aspects of that settling?
I would say the cost of living was a shock. Certainly things appeared a lot more pricey. And there I was, in my mid-teens thinking, I would never pay this in Guyana. So it's a stark reality for me to come to grips with that. I then looked at so many impacting factors of, well, if you're to pursue your dream, how will you fund yourself financially? That led to a point of me having to grow up very fast because I was now in a new society, a new environment where there was no parental guidance. And, any young man in that position, you could go left or right, and I would be lying if I didn't say that I wanted to return home after 6 months to a year because I was unaccustomed to where I was. I ended up doing a job where I was a binman. That's a binman as in a garbage man. For a moment, I just took it as any other job. And it hit home some weeks or months into the job where I was caught in a bin store actually crying because I felt that I'd been to the top school. I had a bit of education, but there I was doing a job that was looked upon in Guyanese culture as the lowest of society being done. So I'd come down that platform or for that platform or ladder. And that was, it was scary, and not having that guidance, but I'm grateful that I didn't just cocoon and went into, a hole or something like that. I was fortunate to have met an older man from St. Lucia, one of our West Indians, who gave me a very stern talking and guidance. And to this day, he's 89 years of age and we remain friends. That said, basically, that wasn't my time to return. I came with a purpose and I would be failing if I would return without even giving myself the opportunity to realize that dream or even try. So driven with that and the fire and the desire that I had, I looked at it and said, right, doing any job should not matter if you're doing that job honestly. And it paid me a salary that if I equated to what my father was earning back in Guyana at that time, I was earning more money than him, emptying dustbins. So I was like, well, that's not that bad. So I then sat down and at the time, I knew nothing about bank accounts. I was a child. I'd never had a bank account. I joined what some Guyanese might know of as a box hand, which is basically a saving partnership between several members that come together. And I was able to save £6,000 odd back in, 1992, 93, which is a lot of money for a student, even in today's terms, to be able to save that while still working. And that I was able to pay for my first year of university without having any dependents or anything. So I worked throughout my entire life to get me through my studies and to where I am.
Wow. Yeah, that's really impressive. Thank you for sharing that.
You.
Yeah. I know you mentioned that you met a St. Lucian man, and we know from, London's history that there was a big influx of Caribbeans who came into the UK. But overall, did you face any cultural shocks or any other moments that made you miss Guyana during those first few moments of migration, the early days?
Yes, because I wasn't really surrounded by the people that I would have been accustomed to during my childhood. Most of my friends either came from a privileged background of either being born in the UK or parents migrating to the UK, and they were the second generation that was being brought up. So It was completely different for me. I always felt as if I was catching up or playing catch up.
Right.
If we were to look at the isms, and we may come on to that, it wasn't really realized or felt by me because I treat all individuals on the basis of character, regardless of, culture or creed background. So that goes out to the window. But it was certainly a challenge where being in that comfort zone of having the normal people or, the ability to, Guyanese will call it SHIT, talk. It made me seem as if I was switching from one end to the other to be accepted. But soon after I migrated, a lot of, I would say a group of about 15 or 20 friends came from Guyana that either went to school there, and I had known they'd either gone to Bishop's High School or they'd gone to Saints or, St. Joseph's or what's not. And we sort of like formed the group because we weren't many years apart. So I didn't in totality miss everything or what's not. We still managed to keep that culture. If we were to look at the bigger picture in terms of where West Indians are and how they've settled in the UK, there are patches within London area and outside of London where you find the majority of groups have settled. And as such, the culture is more engrossed in that particular area. However, the one good thing that has come out of that is every year London has the Notting Hill Carnival, which is West Indian based, and it's the largest street carnival in the entire Europe. So you have the whole West Indian community, regardless of whether you're from Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, or what's not, would generally come out there, and there's the typical MASH equivalent.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. How has Notting Hill Carnival and other experiences shaped your Guyanese identity while living outside of the country? So what aspects of your culture do you actively maintain, being that you're not in close proximity to that many Guyanese people?
That's a difficult one to answer because I think the Guyanese accent is unique in itself. Even though I have lived the majority of my life in the UK, there's still a strong Guyanese ethic. And I think irrespective of where you go or a function that you may attend, etc., the minute the Guyanese speaks, you know they're Guyanese. It's just something about us. And I think we're the second or third generation, so transitioning, they may pick up more of the British accent and the British way of life or stuff like that. Coming from a Guyanese background, we tend to try and maintain that tradition in our culture, in our language, our dialect, or in our food, etc. So it doesn't really diminishes despite we're in a different environment. Take, for instance, I live outside of London now, and we would drive, 50, 60 miles just to have the seasoning, the correct seasoning that will go into, the foods that we're accustomed to, the cook up and the fry rice and doing the dal and stuff like that. We're not going to use what's available here. Not to say that they're bad ingredients, but it's not what we're accustomed to.
It's a big commitment to getting the food tasting right.
Oh, yeah.
I respect it.
Guyanese lingo time. Empty rice bag can't stand up. That means when you're hungry, right, you can't function properly. So food is important.
Very much so. Have you faced any struggles or moments of self-discovery regarding your cultural identity in a new environment?
Yes, I think more recently, because my partner, my other half is Indian, and there's not a great deal of mix between Black and Indian. Certainly outside of Guyana, you don't find that. So wherever we tend to go, we're always asked where we're from. In addition, our accents, our attire does not reflect, for instance, an African in the UK or something like that. There's this distinct difference, and it may very well be our upbringing, our multicultural background, etc., or dialect, like I mentioned, that differentiates us. So we tend to come into there, and people are more intrigued to learn about Guyana. And certainly when I mention the word Guyana to them, I have to be specific and slow my speech to say it's Guyana, not Ghana, because that's all they can relate to or they think about. And then, comes the history lesson of Guyana and how we ended up, being British and being the only English-speaking country in South America. So it's always a topic for conversation.
So, can you share any story of overcoming a significant challenge or setback during your time abroad?
I think the first setback, like I mentioned, was university and getting into college. I went to the RAF and went to the Officers Air Crew and Selection Center. I was one of a million. When I graduated from the Officers Air Crew and Selection Center, I was one of 19, and I was the only Black officer. Worse yet, I was the only West Indian or Guyanese. So I was, that 1% that was in there, so it really was a challenge. I felt in a number of ways I didn't fit in at times, but equally, as I grew into the role and to the position and matured, I realized that I need to be in there. We need to be in there to represent, not only as a nationality, but also to demonstrate the competence and the adversaries that you can overcome towards getting there. And providing that you put in your time, you will get your reward. I put in my time because I was afraid of failure. I knew the circumstances that I was coming from, my family upbringing. I was the first to go to university. I was carrying a flag, and that materialized into my roles that subsequently, after leaving the RAF to end up with Boeing. I never dreamed that I would work for the largest aircraft manufacturer in the world. Who was I? who am I, this little boy that was born in All Boys Town, poor appearances, went to QC, to get a degree in aerospace engineering, to go and work with the largest aircraft company, from a dream of being a pilot or fixing an aircraft. It was, unprecedented. And then while I was in Boeing, I then realized, well, okay, you've gotten to that point. What next? So I thought, right, what if I step out of my comfort zone? That was taking me to a point where I wanted to open up myself, not just academically, but also career-wise, to do something outside of me being an engineer, outside of me being a project manager. And I got the chance of a second dream, which was to go to MIT. I'll be honest, at the third time of me applying for it, when I was actually awarded a place to do a certificate in model-based systems engineering. And I thought, well, okay, here's now an opportunity to fly. You just didn't get the wings of becoming the engineer, becoming the pilot that you wanted to, but you have an opportunity now to fly above the norm. So that fostered a sacrifice for 1 year to literally sit down every religious weekend and study.
Right. Yeah. So what would you say, like, out of the, the long list of accomplishments that you've had, what would you say is the best accomplishment since you've migrated from Guyana? What is like the number one that you're most proud of?
It was just getting my first certifications here in the UK. When I came and I did a HND, like I mentioned, in computer-aided engineering, it was taking mechanical engineering into the new era of computers. So I was learning to program a CNC lathe in X, Y, and Z coordinates, something that, I don't know if it ever existed in Guyana at that time. I could not tell you, but it was the first trip that I brought my mom to the UK for my graduation, and it made me cry. It still does make me emotional because I had to get my head of school to actually sponsor or to write the supporting letter in order for her to get a visa to come to the UK to attend my graduation. And her first thing was to say, you know what, my boy has done it without parental guidance. And that made me very emotional, because to me it was just, hey, you know what? I got to do it. I'm not going back home empty-handed. I'm not going to let, Pinky, Mommy Pinky, whoop me. I've got to be able to show something. So it was always, for me, it's an adventure. I'm going on an adventure. I got to achieve something. I got to take back something, but to answer your question, briefly speaking, I think that was, one of the most outstanding moments for me. There were a lot of people that supported me along that way in terms of the circle of friends at university, having that pep talk by Roy. I still call him Uncle Roy, knowing, what my background was like to take me to that level.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that, Uncle Stephon. And that was actually a very heartfelt story. And you never actually told me that one, so it was interesting hearing that.
So I keep that close to me.
How has your perspective on life, success, and happiness evolved through the lens of migration?
I think through migration, I've been able to see several parts of the world, experience different cultures, met thousands of people, different background, and it has opened my eyes and perspective to life. The second part of that, there have been highs and lows. It's highs in the sense of, yes, I have achieved a great deal. Lows in the sense that I've missed my family. I have now been 30 odd years in the UK, or thereabout. During that time, So much has happened. And here I am, still not fulfilled, I would say, because family plays a vital role, whichever way you look at it.
No, that's right.
And I think in that way, love, family, and success has had its bittersweet moments, but it has turned out for the best. The road always is long and not always straight.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue to the next point that we were going to get at. So, like, what piece of advice or wisdom would you share with fellow Guyanese migrants, or just think about your young self when you first came to the UK? Like, what advice would you give to yourself or someone who is in that same stage?
In terms of if they wanted to come to the UK now?
Yes. Like, how would you go about that?
I think I would be biased in answering that question for the simple reason the pendulum has swung to the other side. There's been so much change that has happened in those last 20 to 30 years that it's a different period. Coming to the UK now, there is so much cultural diversity that happens in and around the London metropolitan area. In one sense, is very good, but it's also being in the economy for this length of time. I've also seen this separation. So come with an open mind. If for any of the new persons wanting to migrate into the UK, I would say to them, you would be wise to open your mind, to come with an open mind, to say, right, I'm not going to get or expected to see all that I've been accustomed to, but I'm prepared to open myself and adapt to the mechanisms, the systems, the culture that I can absorb as well as contribute.
Right.
And if you have the opportunity to return to Guyana as a remigrant, you can be better set to educate those who want to follow. But I would say, take a chance. Take a chance. You never know. It's better to try and fail than fail to try.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that even though you have concerns about the way that Britain or the UK is currently operating, it's a fair piece of advice to offer someone, because you don't want to tell anyone life is sweet on the other side and then they jump ship and they go to England and then they're not prepared, because times are tough across the globe right now. And it was hard when you transitioned from Guyana to England, and things have gotten harder.
What is your desires? What is your drive? What is your motivation? What do you want to achieve at the end of it? That's the first question that you, and only you, can answer that personally. And be open. It may not be what you expect, but you have to be flexible enough that you can adopt, put it to your benefit. Go, be prepared to go out there and try. It's not going to be like Guyana, rain, sun, snow, whatever. Life goes on in London. You have to be prepared that you're going to get out there and you're going to put in your time.
Yep, exactly. Well, to wrap up, what would you say, like, in what ways do you believe the Guyanese diaspora, meaning, Guyanese living abroad, including yourself, how do you play a crucial role in the development and well-being of the homeland?
I am part of the Queen's College Old School Association, both in New York as well as in London. So I get to see both sides of the coin, so to speak. And I actively take an interest in what is ongoing. There's a lot of STEM programs that's being done now on a yearly basis, where several of us return to Guyana, return to our old schools, and we try to bring the students through into what is happening in the inverted commas first world technology. We support the schools in terms of having the necessary computers, the books, etc., the resources, that they are not left behind and they don't face the gap that I faced in coming across. Several of us within the organization, if we're not participating actively in fundraising and hosting of events, etc., either in London or in the US or New York or in DC or something like that, is to be involved with events that are happening back home that
Exactly.
could help to shape the economy and the way of thinking, that you can be an asset. We now have a position where the economy of Guyana is growing rapidly at a pace that far outstrips the local, in my opinion, the local knowledge base and the talent base that's there, because so many has migrated. Now, in my opinion, there is no better position for us to be in than to take the knowledge that we have acquired in the UK and the US and take it back home, that we can say to them, right, you now need to raise the bar in order that you meet the international standard.
Uncle Stephon, thank you so much for sharing your entire story and for being so future thinking about how we can
Thank you for having
contribute to
me.
Guyana. Like, it was very, very impactful to hear your story. And I think that it does speak to something that Afia and I and like the Gold Rush organization really believes, is that across borders, Guyanese people should be communicating and connecting. But I also think that across generations, and it's interesting to hear all these different stories and thoughts, because although we communicate fairly often, it's interesting to see how your journey has gotten you where you are, and the little stories that we don't hear about that clearly have
Right.
shaped you. As much as you've accomplished, I was shocked to hear that one of the biggest moments in your life was just being able to fly your mom to England to see you accomplish something. And so I think that that speaks to, our culture and how much we value family, and about the fact that even when you move abroad, you don't lose the sense of what is important, which is your family and,
Exactly.
all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So I really did appreciate having your story be the first story that we shared. And I know that a
Thank
lot of
you.
people look forward to hearing you speak
Yes.
with your
Yeah.
funny British
Well.
Guyanese accent.
Don't mention it to Rennie. She calls me Caucasian.
Yeah, we're very appreciative of all that you've shared, and
You're
I'm
welcome.
sure that this is going to impact a young Guyanese person who is thinking of, migrating and, all of that. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome. There are loads of opportunities. Just apply yourself.
All right.
Yeah.
So the way we normally end, typical Guyanese banter. So Afia and I usually say, all right, we're going to gaff. So you want to say that for us, Uncle Stephon?
I ain't know how I'm going to song with that, but I'll see you later.
Okay, good.
All right.
All right,
All
bye,
right.
Ciao.
Steph.
Thank
Ciao.
you.
Thank you.